Okay.
Something should come up. Preparing to live stream.
YouTube.
So that means I think we're gonna lose all the. Oh no, we don't lose Zoom, but we just. I think that just the. Yeah. Okay. So now I can see it, and
if we have to like tweet out a new live link or something, that's fine.
okay. So I got the new one. Let me just share this, and we'll just share into the. ENS workshop channel for the YouTube. I think that should work. And could someone check from yours, like if it's working? Once it's working, we can start.
It's working on mine.
Yeah, it works. It's working.
Good. Okay, so
cool.
yeah, please just Alicia, send to whatever the channel that will be changing the YouTube URL.
Okay,
I think that should be it. Good. Okay, so apology for everybody waiting. So now I'm gonna start share screen again. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, and me freezing here. Okay. So present. Okay, so everybody, thank you very much for coming to ENS online workshop. So online workshop has been, ENS workshop itself first organized by Nick back in 2017. And we were doing like pretty much every year, like summer to autumn until COVID hit. So, but last year we started, I think somewhere around this time, we started doing the online workshop. And because of online, we can do more often. So we currently doing like every 6 months. And so today, now I don't know where you guys are, but in UTC time, it's like around 4-ish. And according to schedule, I must have finished intro the housekeeping, but I'm starting now. But so we going to have basically the 4 big session. First session is ENS as NFT, also known as name wrapper, which will be presented by Jeff. There's a lots of new concept coming, so this is the time you can basically ask. And I think recently we asked a lot, being asked a lot of questions on the Discord. This is the time you ask to the expert, the Jeff. Then in the second session, Brantley is going to cover basically. He kind of like rebranded as a ENS as a kind of domain name to almost like a Web3 profile. So he can talk his kind of vision, and also I think we have a guest from Sprouts, so they can talk about logging with Ethereum topic. And the third one is it's been quite a popular session in the last 2 workshops about how we are doing with a layer 2. So that one I would probably cover the first half of like what we are up to. Then like I'll pass to Nick so that he can kind of talk about what we have to do to actually turn the kind of still in the prototyping stage into the actual usable. And we might have a new announcement on this one. So this is most interesting one. Then last session, last couple of times I usually ask some of the community project to come and pitch. And this time I wanted to change the format a bit because we just had an East Online hackathon and we had a couple great submissions. And so we asked some of the hack which just came fresh one, plus the other one who's we asked in the Discord channel like, are you guys working on anything new? And there's a couple of people raise hand to pitch. So it's going to be kind of 6 people pitching, like 3 minutes pitch, 3 minutes Q&A. And after that, we are going to have a snapshot voting to decide which one's the coolest, and they win the winner. And after that, I think, another thing is, so this is the first time we have a 2 session like Zoom where people can actually ask directly questions to all the speakers. But at the same time, we also have a YouTube live session, which just made it work. So for both audience to kind of converge, we encourage everybody to join in our Discord channel server, and we have a special channel for ENS workshop. I think the workshop session itself, anyone should be able to join. But apparently for these each session, so first session is subdomain, second profile, that kind of stuff. Apparently you need to have the what was it called, collaborant. So we have a bot where if you say join asterisk star asterisk, it checks whether you have an ENS name, and only if you have an ENS name and the reverse record, now it's called primary name set, you should be able to join to the Discord. So there you can kind of ask questions. You can ask a question on Zoom and the YouTube, but it would be nice if you can streamline questions here. But like if you are in the Zoom and if you want to ask questions, feel free to jump in. As long as time is limited, and so I expect you kind of respect everybody's time. But like we want to make it interactive. So like if you have questions, you can ask text here, but you can just ask the question directly. And I think that's about it. Alicia, did I miss anything, or that's all good?
It was great.
Good. Okay, so now, I just said, so each Zoom session, each last thing, each Zoom session has a unique URL per the meeting, and then whoever participant, they should have received the calendar, so you should know, and there's 5-10 minutes interval. Okay, why it's repeating again? Lastly, I think we have 3 POP, and so what was it? Attendee is for everybody who join, or is it just for the YouTube? I can't remember.
So participants are people in the Zoom call. Attendees are everyone watching on YouTube and engaging in Discord and Twitter, and then the community voter is for anyone who votes on the snapshot for the show and tell.
Yes. So for the voters one, it's just via snapshot. For the others, we'll share how to claim the link later on. So just stay tuned. And so now I pass it to Jeff. I'll stop my share so you can start.
Okay. It says host disabled, attendee shooting screen sharing.
Okay, let me check. Make co-host. How about this?
Okay, there we go.
Okay.
Can you see?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. All right, hi everyone. I'm Jeff. I'm a developer at ENS, and today I'm going to talk to you about ENS as an NFT. I was a little anxious about doing this talk because I've been in quarantine for a whole week, and haven't seen people before. So I was going to imagine you all in your underwear, but I guess it's an online workshop, so you're probably already in your underwear. So I guess I don't need to do that. But let's get started. So what do I mean by ENS as an NFT? Isn't .eth names already NFTs? Well, you would be right, they are already NFTs. ENS was released in May 2017, so actually predates ERC 71. That means that it is an NFT by all forms of the word, but it just wasn't part of the ERC 721 standard because it predates CryptoKitties, it predates punks as well, and all of these other things that that came out after it. So we used a deed contract instead for .eth name to deal with ownership. So the deed contract allowed you to transfer owners, and we didn't use a token contract. But during the ENS migration of 2019, we updated the .eth namespace to ERC 721. So we could, become more standards compliant with the rest of the Web3 community. But because we had our contracts running on the blockchain for a while in production, we didn't really want to change the registry. So that meant that subdomains were kind of relegated to this position where they weren't ERC 721, but .eth names were. So they were on a kind of a different standard. So .eth are ERC 721 and NFTs, and subdomains are also NFTs, but they're not ERC 721 and they're not 1155. So that's something we that's something we wanted to change. So why create the name wrapper? Well, oh, sorry, yeah, here we go. Why create the name wrapper? So initially we wanted to rewrite the subdomain registrar to make all subdomains on the subdomain registrar NFTs. And that was the subdomain registrar was it is a contract that allows you to commit a .eth name. And if you commit a .eth name to it, it allows other people to register a subdomain on top of that name. So for instance, if you commit give me the .eth, which is a real ENS name that someone has committed to the subdomain registrar, it lets users register a subdomain on, on give me the .eth. So like sub.giveme the .eth. Yeah. And when we were thinking about rewriting the subdomain registrar to make all subdomains NFTs, we thought, well, if we do that, we are only allowing NFTs, we're only allowing subdomains that are part of this subdomain registrar contract to become standards compliant NFTs. All other subdomains, like for instance, we've got our own company ENS name, ens.eth, and everyone that is works for ENS could get a subdomain of that. But those subdomains, if they were just handed out by ens.eth, they would just be normal subdomains. They wouldn't be NFTs. And anyone else that creates subdomains, they also would not be NFTs. So we really wanted all ENS names to be a standards compliant NFT. So to do this, we realized we needed to create a new base level contract to wrap any ENS name. Now this would allow the ENS subdomains and .eth NFTs to all be part of the same collection, the same token standard, instead of having separate tokens. In contrast to other organizations like Decentraland, they have created DCL.eth, which is great. They give subdomains to like all of people that are part of that community can register subdomains as on top of DCL.eth, and this means that they've created a subdomain registrar in a sense to register DCL.eth. But these tokens are not. It's a token on their own, and every individual subdomain registrar on top of that would have to create their own token, and it would fragment the ENS world. So, for instance, if you had this collection on OpenSea, OpenSea would have multiple different ENS name collections of all different subdomains. So we really wanted the NFT token to all be together, so the ENS world can kind of stay together when other people integrate us. So what is the name wrapper? Well, the name wrapper, like I said, it's a base level contract that can wrap any ENS name, not just .eth names, and it also includes subdomains and also DNSSEC names. It's all under the same contract. And it's similar to any other wrapping contract, like a WETH contract, or even like the Punks contract that wraps. So Punks are also pre-CryptoKitties and pre-ERC-721. So Punks, if you want to trade them on a platform that just deals with ERC-721 or ERC-1155, you actually have to wrap them. So it's very similar to any other wrapping contract. So the basics of that is names can be wrapped, and obviously they can be unwrapped. But that's not all this wrapping contract does. Like once you wrap your name, they now have some abilities, some superpowers that you gain by being part of the name wrap. And one of those abilities is to be able to burn permissions. So what do I mean by burn permissions? Why would you want to do that? Well, the name wrapper just wraps all of the registry functions on top of it, including stuff like replacing subdomains or setting new subdomains. So one thing you might want to do is similar to like how we talked about with the subdomain registrar, is if you wanted to create a subdomain registrar on top of your .eth name, then you might want to ensure to your users that you have no ability to replace that subdomain and steal it from your user. Like maybe they've been using this username on, let's say it's Decentraland for a very long time. You might not want your users to feel like, oh, what if DCL.eth wants to, take away my name? Well, you can use the name wrapper here to take away that permission from yourself. You say like, oh, we're just going to burn this permission. So after you burn that permission, the parent owners cannot take the names from the users anymore, and it gives you a guarantee to users a little bit. So what else does the name wrapper do? Well, like I said, it wraps registry functionality such as set resolver, set TTL, anything that's on the registry, it's wrapped now by the name wrapper. And that's how we kind of prevent the use the permission system as well. It becomes the source of truth for name ownership for wrap names. So instead of looking for ownership on the registry or the registrar for your .eth names, you would look to the wrapper and check the ownership on the wrapper. Wrap names also follow the ERC 1155 token standard. And the reason it's not 1155 or 721 was for gas reasons, but they, in our opinion, it functions very similar to 721 and gets a lot of the benefits of the gas efficiencies. .eth names will be wrapped by default on registration, which means that after we deploy the wrapper, any additional .eth names that get registered will automatically be wrapped and automatically part of this new NFT collection. And old names can optionally migrate, but there is no forced migration. Old names can still remain on the old standard, and they will function exactly the same, and there won't be any problem with them. And one thing I'm quite excited about is the on-chain preimage. So what a preimage is basically a mapping, a dictionary between name hash to name. And so if anyone's integrated ENS before, you might have realized you have to name hash the name, and sometimes it's difficult to find out what the actual string representation of the name is. But now, and we've had to kind of use the graph as like a mitigation tool, or our own preimage database as a mitigation tool, so to find out the string representation. But now I'm pretty happy to say that we're passing the name as a string to the name wrapper. So after the name wrapper is in use sometime, all the names that are wrapped by the name wrapper will have their name in a string representation inside this contract. So it'll be an on-chain dictionary of name hash to name, which I'm really happy about, because I've been struggling with that for a few years now on ENS. So what are the caveats of the name wrapper? Well, it does take a little bit of extra gas to register the name, but we have been as gas efficient as possible. It takes a bit of extra gas, obviously, because you need to register the name and you need to wrap it straight after. But we have been as gas efficient as possible, and we're still increasing the efficiency of the registrar controller. And we've been able to do that because of some of the Solidity improvements in the last couple of years. So that's always good. Wrapping is not forced. So in the beginning, there'll likely be 2 tokens representing .eth names. This may be a little bit of an overhead for people integrating, having heavy integrating ENS. And lastly, and most importantly, the expiry of .eth names can unwrap and unburn permissions. So this is probably the most important one, and it's related to burning permissions. I mentioned if you burn the permission to unwrap and replace subdomains, it gives your users a guarantee that you can't steal their names. And this is only when the name is still hasn't expired. Now, if the name is expired, it means that someone else can come in and buy the name and unwrap the name. So to ensure that your names, can't be rugged, can't be stolen from your users, the parent name must be renewed. If the name is like, say, owned by like a DAO or like like a company, or maybe like Decentraland, some big organization where there's like maybe lots of subdomain users, then you have to remember that the names can be renewed by anyone. So people can get together and actually renew the name if, say, the keys get lost for that name or something like that. You can still ensure that your users can keep their subdomains, and it can't get rugged by someone buying the name after it expires or something like that. So now I'd like to talk a little bit about how to interact with the name wrapper with a little bit of code. So the first thing you might want to do when you're interacting with the name wrapper is just to wrap a .eth name. And it's quite simple. All you need to do is transfer your .eth ERC721 token to the name wrapper. So this is a bit of code to illustrate that. Just on the base registrar, you just call safe transfer from, and then you pass through the arguments. And it just, the only thing you need to do extra is just add a little bit of extra data, which is the bytes at the end, which passes through some extra arguments, which is here you can see it's the label, the string representation of the label. So if it was jeff.ens.eth, this would be Jeff. This is the owner that owns it, owns the new token. The permissions or the fuses was what we call it in the contract, and then the resolver, which these two can be optionally left empty. And if you want to wrap other names like subdomains or DNSSEC names, you just call a normal wrap function. This is slightly different because we don't have to deal with the ERC721 token of the .eth registrar. So all you need to do is a two-step process. You need to approve the wrapper on the registry for all your ENS names, and then you just call wrap, which is, it takes the same arguments. It takes instead of it being the label, it's just the whole name. It's the whole name, the owner in the new token, fuses and resolver. So the next thing you might want to do on the name wrapper is checking the ownership of a .eth name. This is slightly more complicated now because we will have two tokens at the beginning, the old registrar and then obviously the new wrapper contract. So you need to first check the base registrar, the original .eth registrar, for who owns it. And if the owner is the name wrapper, then it really has been wrapped. And then you can go check the name wrapper and do the same thing, the .owner of function, and pass in the token ID. And that's how you find the owner of the actual .eth name after it's been wrapped. And then checking permissions is something else you might want to do. To do this, you would do similar to this. You would check the owner in the registrar to check if it's been wrapped. And that's how you check if it's been wrapped or not. And once you know if it's been wrapped, that's when you can call the get fuses function, because it hasn't been wrapped. Obviously, it's not going to have any fuses. And fuses is the word we use for permissions here. We call it fuses because once they've been burned, they can't be unburned like a fuse. So you call name wrapper.get fuses with the name hash of your name, and then this returns a number which represents the permissions. The permissions, whether they've been burned or not, and a name safety enum, which this is basically an enum that represents whether or not it's safe. And I say safe in quotations because it just means like if the domain is expired, it's kind of not safe because someone else could register the parent domain and then take away your subdomain. Or if they haven't burnt their fuse for replacing subdomains, their permissions for replacing subdomains, then technically it's not safe. And in this situation, it will show you like what's wrong with this particular name or what is the risk. So what can you do with the name wrapper? Well, like I alluded to before, the reason why we create the name wrapper was to create a generalized version of the subdomain registrar that would allow you to create NFTs and NFT subdomains. But actually, like, it's very easy to create your own subdomain registrar contract. So actually, a community member, cod.eth, actually messaged me and he wants to create subdomains for all Call of Duty users, Call of Duty gamers. And he was asking me how he could do this. And this is, a basic like MVP contract that would do this. So all he would need to do is wrap cod.eth, and then he would deploy this contract and approve it on the wrapper. So it just means that when you approve it on the wrapper, it just allows this contract to do what it wants with your names. And then you would burn the permissions to unwrap cod.eth, and you would burn the permissions to replace subdomains. So cod.eth couldn't steal any names from its users. And then you would just deploy this contract. This contract is very simple. It would just, the constructor would just take the address of the wrapper, and then it would take the name hash of the name that you wanted to register subdomain, so like cod.eth, and it would just store those things. And then once you deploy this, it's ready to go. All the user does is just called register, and it just passes in. The user would just pass in the label. So for instance, gamer for gamer cod.eth, and optionally fuses, which they can just set to 0 at the beginning, and it will just call the wrapper function set subnode owner and wrap, passing through cod.eth as a name hash, the label, which would be like gamer, and then the message.sender for the owner of the new subdomain, so just the person who called this function, and then optionally fuses, and we're ready to go. And you basically have a fully functioning subdomain registrar just with 16 lines of codes, plus a few comments, and you could just deploy this once we have the name wrapper up. You could just deploy this today as like an MVP to get people to to register their subdomains, and it'd be very easy to upgrade. All you need to do is just deploy a new subdomain registrar up 2 with all your new up-to-date functionality, and they will be running side by side. They will both be approved to register subdomains on your behalf, and they'll both be able to run in parallel, and you could just unapprove this subdomain registrar when you'd want to deprecate it. So it'd be very easy. So what else can you do with it? Well, this is another idea that I didn't come up with myself. It's ENS subdomain as an art collection. Now, I'm pretty excited about this. I think it's pretty cool. So another Twitter user DM'd me and was telling me about how he wanted to make an art collection out of one of his ENS names. And it's not this ENS name, but it's a similar idea. So you could imagine having a ENS name like fruit.eth, and the art collection is just lots of different fruits, photograph fruits of apples and bananas, for instance. And so you could have apple.fruit.eth and banana.fruit.eth, and they are the actual art NFTs in this collection. And because their subdomains are now ERC1155 and they're standards compliant, they can have custom metadata and images, and you can attach art to them just like any other art NFT. But each art piece, each of the each of the art NFTs are also fully functional ENS names. So what does that mean? It means each piece can also point to their own, like the apple.fruit.eth can point to its own Apple website, and banana.fruit.eth can also point to a different website. And anything that you can do with ENS names, you can also do with each individual NFT in this collection. So you could add, set up cryptocurrency addresses for each one if you wanted to, or set up text records that give some Easter egg information about your piece of art. Anything that you can do with ENS, you can also do with this art collection, with each individual piece inside the art collection. So I think that's really cool. I think there's like a lot of ideas you can play with here. These are just two of the things that we've thought of, and I'm sure like anyone here can also think of hundreds of different ideas that can play on this as well, which I think is really cool. So that's pretty much it for the name wrapper. What's left? Well, the contracts have been written and audited. It's been audited by PwC, and also Samsung has also taken a look at it, and he's also he found quite a large bug in it, which we've since fixed, which is great. And we've got basic UI support in development, which Leon is also working on. So hopefully we can get that wrapped up soon. And we are planning advanced support for the wrapper, being able to deal with complicated permissions, and maybe even getting in the generalized subdomain registrar in there in the new design. So we'll be looking to do that in the new redesign. But and then for the controller contracts, which is the registration of .eth, they've been edited and are currently being made more gas efficient. This includes doing reverse record and registration, and obviously like wrapping the actual name on registration. And so once we've got this wrapped up, we can start thinking about deploying it and getting it out there to you guys. Yeah, so that's pretty much all I have. But if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask them now, and also obviously feel free to DM me if in the future you guys want to integrate anything and need any support or anything, or on the ENS Discord. yeah, that's all I've got. So questions?
I think there's about 3 questions on Zoom and chat.
Okay, I'll take a look at Zoom chat. Maybe I'll stop
So
presenting first. 4, okay.
Hey, this is Gary. If I could start off with a question.
Okay, sure.
With the names and the original name, and the original name needs to be already renewed and renewed. Like 2 questions. One, if the original name does expire, then does that expire the subdomains? And then 2, I know we didn't talk about it, but in the UX and UI, when someone looks at their subdomain, is there going to be some sort of like indicator that says, hey, this main domain of a subdomain you own is close to expiration, or won't it matter if it expires? I didn't quite understand. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, let me answer the last one first, because it's the one I remember. So yeah, I think that's a good question. So in the UI, we probably need to show that like the subdomain's parent is expiring soon or something like that, and there is maybe a risk of someone registering the name and attacking that subdomain by replacing with something else. And what was the first question again?
The first question is, yeah, if the main domain does expire, does everyone that has a subdomain, do they lose their subdomain?
Yeah, so they don't lose their subdomain. Like the subdomain is still registered, it's still there. It just functions as a normal subdomain. So in ENS, it is a risk. It's not a risk, sorry. It's the parent domain always has the ability to replace a subdomain, unless you create a system where they literally cannot call that function. So you could do something like, send it to a contract where the contract can't call that function, or like with the name wrapper, we're actually preventing you from doing it because the name wrapper owns the actual name, and we prevent it using permissions. So the situation where a name expires, what happens is basically the new person who owns the name that got wrapped now owns it and can unwrap it and could replace your subdomain basically.
Okay, because I in the presentation I thought it said burn permissions, right? Burn permissions for the person that owns domains, call the name back of the subdomains. And so if the name does get expired because nobody renewed the name, then when someone purchases that name off the second market again, then they'll have the ability to unwrap the subdomains.
That's correct, yeah.
Well, hold on a second. Not purchasing on the secondary market is if that name expires and that name is
that's
registered
right.
again.
Yeah, not purchasing.
That's different.
Yeah,
If
not
it's
purchasing.
simply,
Yeah.
if it's simply transfer on the secondary market, then that name is everything functions exactly the same. But when a name expires, and when somebody registers that again, isn't it like the name is being recreated? Nick, is that, or Jeff, is that correct?
It's not that it's being recreated, but basically, like if it gets transferred to someone else, it functions exactly the same. And if it keeps on getting renewed, it can't be unburned. The only way it can be unburned is if it expires.
Right, but I'm saying when a name expires and then is registered again, it's the reason that new name is then not wrapped necessarily, because it's just creating the name again. Am I incorrect there, Nick?
No, that's correct. The only way to unwrap a name that has had its unwrap fuse burned is if it expires and then it's renewed.
If it expires and then is re-registered.
Yes.
And so when that name is re-registered, I'm sorry about this edge case, but if that name is expired, dropped past the grace period, and then someone purchases that name, and so they purchased that name and it already had subdomains created. The subdomains, I saw there's the check system where the subdomains are going to say, hey, there might be a potential issue. Those subdomains will still exist even though the name got expired and re-registered. Yes. And then B, the new owner of the name, they have the option of making all right again with the existing subdomain owners, or is there options Are there options to do something bad, something good, or something neutral?
Yeah, so if the name expires and it's re-registered, the new owner has complete control over the name. They could choose to recommit it to the subdomain registrar and reburn those fuses and set everything right. They could also not do so. So anyone who owns a subdomain needs to make sure that the parent name doesn't expire, basically.
Okay,
Yeah,
excellent.
and I think
Thank you, guys.
the best way to do that, just to comment on that, is that a name can just, of course, be paid ahead like a large number of years, and then it's no chance of that happening.
Yeah, and thank you for all this. This is all a lot more clear. I think it's pretty crystal clear. And the only thing I want to say now is that the UX UI of the subdomain holder is going to be critical for them to know that they themselves should renew this domain name, and then B, to understand that these green checks are there, these security checks are there, right? Because all of these cases that can happen will happen. And so it's going to fall upon the UX and UI to be really simple to say, yep, all of this is kosher, and this is when the domain expires, and just a way that's really clear for the layman. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, that's a good point. I agree.
Yeah, very good points.
That's exactly
Okay,
why we have the workshop, by the way, is that this isn't just like us presenting. We want to hear from people, their feedback. What should we do? And so thank you, Gary. That is a great point. I don't think we had thought of that, but we should have that in the UI.
Cool. Okay, I'll start answering some questions from the Zoom chat. Hadrian asks, does the name wrapper have an ERC 165 or something similar to automatically detect that the owner is the wrapper? What do you mean by automatically detect the owner is the wrapper?
So my question here is, like, when you want to know who owns a domain or a subdomain, you should start going to the registry, and if the owner, as recorded by the registry, is the name wrapper, then you should ask the name wrapper. No, I'm guessing in most cases there will be only one name wrapper, but there could be multiples. So it would be simpler if there was a way to automatically detect whether the owner of a domain is a name wrapper, and that should be done by checking if it's a contract, and if it's a contract, checking something like
right. Yeah, so yeah, it doesn't have that ability right now, because the plan was never to have a second name wrapper. We kind of kept it slimmed down as possible to not have to like if we had hundreds of thousands of names in this, we would have to do another migration again. It would be, we want it to be as like concrete as the registry in a way. But yeah, if obviously we were doing that, then maybe that's something we should think about.
Like, one point also is for other chains, because it's very easy to redeploy an instance of ENS on, let's say, Polygon, for example. And it would be great if the only entry point you need is the actual registry. That means that everything else should be discoverable. So obviously, if the name wrapper has the same address on mainnet, Goerli, Ringby, that's great, but you should also assume that at some point people will have ENS deployments on other layers, and they will want this name wrapper as well, but it will not be at the same address.
Okay, yeah, I think that's something we should think about for sure. Thank you. Stefan asked, do you need to deploy your own subdomain registrar, or is there a general purpose subdomain registrar contract out there? So actually, yeah, I mean, I talked about that in the presentation, that the reason we made the name wrapper was when we were updating the subdomain registrar. And so it's always been an idea to recreate the original subdomain registrar and create a general purpose subdomain registrar that if you only got a very simple use case, you could just use our general purpose subdomain registrar. We haven't deployed that yet because we haven't deployed the name wrapper yet. But you could also deploy your own subdomain registrar as well if you needed like custom logic, or you wanted to attach something to the users of your subdomain. That could be done as well. Assuming an NFT bridge already exists for an L2, is the NFT wrapper a good way to transfer ownership of domains to the L2? Could you expand on that again? I'm not 100% sure what you mean.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's an L2 session coming up later. I came to this session specifically because of the like what I see as possible crossover here, and it's a very complicated matter, I think. But yeah, some like I think like, you know, if you want to move an NFT between one layer to another, or I think like better terminology just being domains, and this gets into sort of like other EVM chains as well. Polygon, same idea. So I guess my mental model is that if you own a name on the mainnet, you probably should own that name on every chain, but I could be wrong there. That'd be a better world in my opinion. And so in the situation where, let's say you want to move a name, you want to sell a name, you want to be able to trade it more cheaply on a different domain rather than mainnet, would it make sense to use the NFT wrapper for that purpose?
So on the first point, yeah, I do believe that our vision is always to have having one source of truth is pretty critical for ENS. We didn't want someone to kind of split the domains across different chains. So you would own the same name on different. So other people would own the same name on a different chain. That would be a bit weird. So I think that's something yeah, we should definitely think about. But yeah, maybe we can expand on that in the LT session. Okay. Okay, thanks for the question. Rovan Heck asks, could NFTs be named wrapped? Well, I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. You mean like wrap a punk in a subdomain or something like that?
I think similar to your earlier things, like you have existing ENS names and you can now name wrap them. Could you do similar things with existing NFTs and put them into a namespace? So instead of having this weird, long, complicated addresses for NFTs, could you actually give them an ENS name by doing the same thing, the same logic of name wrapping?
I'm not sure if you could just do it with just the name wrapper, but you might have like a wrapper of the wrapper that you could take the punk and put it into that wrapper, and that also takes the named NFT wrapper. But yeah, I'm not sure if that's exactly what you're thinking of, but yeah, like it would be pretty cool if that could be done. But yeah, we definitely have to brainstorm that to see if that's possible. But I don't think just with
you mean token ID itself is a name? Is that the question? Or?
Right. I think he's saying, could you take an NFT and wrap it with an ENS name so that now that ENS name is like that NFT now, like represents it, they like combine it. So like, you know, Jeff, how you were talking about the idea of like you make a subdomain and that's an NFT and it's like an art NFT and it's like the same thing, right? Well, basically, could you take like legacy NFTs and wrap them with an ENS name so they are an ENS name and NFT combined? Right?
Yeah,
that was my understanding.
Yeah, so you need something to like own the punk itself, right? So it feels like you need another contract to like take the punk and take the ENS name or something like that.
Yeah, Ruben, I think it's a brilliant idea. I love it. I don't know how it would work, but that kind of got me excited. We got to think.
Yeah.
About that.
What do you think?
Cool. Yeah, that was a question at least.
Yeah, that was worth the workshop. All right, thanks everybody. We can go home. A good idea. That was it.
Okay. NFT Art Fund asks, what are the fees associated when trying to wrap names? It's just the gas associated with it. There's no additional fee apart from the gas associated with it. We've tried to keep the gas down as much as possible. Yeah. Will there be a recording for this? Yes, there will be. This is being streamed live on YouTube.
Yeah, it's live, right? Dude, you're recorded right now.
Yeah. I am still confused if an ENS name expires and it's it remains there. It's just at risk if the parent wants to take that name away. If that subdomain is particularly valuable, then obviously you want the parent to be renewed. Okay. I think that's all the questions in the chat.
It's just like sort of like a behavioral, like a way of the world, right? Like if you own, you know, like a really cool subdomain, right? I can't think of one, but if you own like a really cool subdomain, then you just know that, you know, like all the players just collectively know, especially with the UX UI, that they want to, you know, keep that main domain registered, because anybody can renew that for, you know, what's right now $5.
Yeah, just like I alluded to before, I feel like if it was a very important name and you know, like a big DAO name or a very big application, then people could probably, you know, get together and renew the name together. And I expect like big DAOs or whatever that wanted to do this, or big organizations to burn it and then like register it for like 100 years, because, you know, maybe it's if it's a $5 name for 100 years, it's like $500 to show to your users like, we're not going to steal your names and it's never going to expire.
Correct. And so Stefan says subdomains are not as censorship resistant as top-level ENS names. Correct. You know, unless it has the wrapper on a name that's been registered for 1,000 years, in which case then it is as censorship resistant.
And that's only if it's like you don't own the parent name, right? Subdomains are censorship resistant as top-level ENS names if you own the parent, right? This is you know, this has always been like this, and it's just a way of assigning subdomains. So if you want to get a subdomain of someone that already owns that parent, this is a way to ensure it to be yours forever.
Okay, I think about time. And so thank you very much, Jeff. I think it's almost time to go to bed, I guess. In your time zone in Taiwan.
Yeah, 1 a.m. here.
Yeah. So we'll take like 5 or 7 minutes break, and we'll join for the next session led by Bradley. And one minor change is that initially we were supposed to use one YouTube live link, but that's not working. So probably we are generating new your links, which Alicia's gonna put into like Discord, and I think we'll tweet and all that stuff. So yeah, that's all the difference. Okay. Thank you very much, and see you in 5 minutes.
Yep.
Bye, guys.
Cheers, everyone. Bye.